States did was these two private companies went to China and said to China, why don't you launch some of these satellites? China says, okay, it's big money. So the American companies go to China to launch the satellites. And so there's a big stink about China launching these satellites. The chart offered at a housing hearing by this congressman, the top Pentagon expert monitoring nuclear proliferation during the board, showed that between 1990 and 1996, 1 in 4 Chinese rockets carrying commercial satellites blew up. So you shoot 4 and 1 is no good. But since 1996, the Chinese had a perfect record of 10 consecutive launches. No failures in the past 10 launches. Is that a coincidence or the result of the cumulative technology transfer? Half of the aircraft industry in America is in China. They all there trying to put those factories there. That's what Clinton is there for. Yet the timing of China's newfound success is launching multi-million-dollar satellites into orbits was striking. It was in the mid-1996 that 2 American satellite makers, Loral and Communication and Hughes Electronics, helped Chinese engineers to figure out what went wrong in their satellites. The reliability of the Chinese rockets is important. Now that they can shoot these rockets accurately with the help of the US government, these industries, the reliability of Chinese rockets is important because the missiles that send American communication satellites into orbit are the same that are the nuclear weapons that come over. And we go on to the Chinese connection, the Chinese connection, the Chinese connection. What I'm going to end here with is a little piece on the Soviet Union and population. We got to do a whole section on the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, the white people, the white Russians, the Germans, you have Europe, the way they cut it out. What the white man has done in his own mind and imposed, he took a group of mountains they call a Caucasus, and he has said that this mountains represents Europe. And he took another set of mountains called a Ural and said the Ural and the Caucasus, everything makes up Europe. They decided it. From about 1400, the Western European German, who you know as English and French, and there was the Eastern European German. That Eastern European German is called Rus or Russian. They began to push into Asia. Another time we can go over, and they progressively began to take the land from these Asians, Pakistanis, Indians, Chinese, Alawites, what you call Ainus, Africans. They took this part of the world you call Russia by force from 1400 until 1970. So they got what they call Russia the same way their cousins got us. The Soviet Union broke up. So the Soviet Union lost access to a lot of these lands. They were getting the food from Khuzestan. They were getting uranium from Tajikistan. They were getting the oil from Azerbaijan, etc. So what made Russia strong was what they took from these Asians. But presently, the northern half of Asia, which is called Siberia, is rich in wood. It's the largest wooded area in the world. It's got wood, it's got diamonds, it's got gold, it's got platinum, it's rich. But who took it? The Russians. The white Asian, white European, white Germans took it from these Asian people. And this long article here, which we will deal on Russia. But let me just take 2 little snippets to understand where Russia is at. The first idea, and it's not, I took it from different parts. The first idea, this is white Russians talking to white Americans. The first idea is to bring a genuinely, this is from the New York Times editorial, June 17, 1998, Russia talking to America. The first idea is to bring a genuinely large number of young Russians, the entire cohorts of the new leaders, especially those from the province, to spend considerable time in the United States. So the only white people that they have presently to begin to try to offset your population in America are the white Russians. Listen what Russia is saying to the United States. Bringing large numbers of Russians to the United States to avoid the, okay, well, we won't do that one. I found a genuine excitement in Russia about the idea that the United States might begin its long overdue major investment in the emerging Russian market with a key project or two that would reflect the broader American commitment to help Russia develop who? Siberia. Russia doesn't have the technology capability. What's in Siberia? Oil, diamonds, gold, wood, etc. Oil, Russia, when it controlled all this, was the world's largest oil producer, one of the world's largest exporters of diamond and gold. So they say to America, can you help us develop this? Help Russia, America's commitment to help develop Russia, help Russia develop Siberia. The vast region has enormous symbolic appeal for Russians. They view Siberia as the still unspoiled spiritual heartland of Mother Russia. Oh, only since they stole it. But they fear that China will do what? Which still has iridescent claims, and a growing number of energetic guest workers in Siberia will eventually take it over. Those Chinese, the Mongolians, Indians, going to retake it. And it all ties down now that China is big. Whether they deserve to take it or not, it's powerful. It's got weapon and army. And India and Pakistan is sitting there. They have to arm to deal with China. And those whites are not going to hold Siberia. There are too few of them. They don't have enough weapon. When Russia can't beat Chechnya, a little country, it's sure not going to knock off 3 million man Chinese army with all these weapons and stuff. So they know they're going to leave Siberia. So what I'm saying is, as we conclude, there is a tremendous amount of change that has occurred in the world economy, and it's all related to how countries have been able to retake lands, how they build themselves. So this same dynamic that the European is struggling with, dying on his feet, the major battle right now is with Asia. Asia is running with Europe and America technologically. They're running in parallel with America in weapons. We have all the natural resources. And that's where our power and our strength lies here. And I'm just going to end with this article here. And I'll photocopy and send you another time how you can list yourself as white, black, blue, and green, or whatever you want to. But here is something on population. I'll leave it, don't worry about that. Here's some Europeans, white people, Wall Street Journal, they're running around the world trying to sterilize your women. And let me read to you what this individual, they're using quinacrine, one of the medicines you use for malaria. And what they do is they take it and they put it up in the uterus of women. This all ties in because without people you can't hold the land. Why Russia's going to lose Siberia, they don't have the population. Why the Europeans can never retake Africa, you don't have the population. And why it is, if you look at the statistics, I'm not going to take time to find it. Let's go to 1850. Well, you know the mass immigration of Europeans was from 1850 to 1920. Right. And you know, as that time, using New York and the United States, that brought the European population up to probably close to 90 to 95% of the population. As of 1998, let's use this collective word white, whatever it means. That's what they say. And let's take people of color, the majority. and let's take whites who the minority. In America, they say their numbers was 80-10. They say now it is 60-40. And another 50, 60 years, it's going to be 40-60.
Yes, sir.
Now, then you begin to understand, as we'll get it later, why they're playing all these games about who is what you could be. Because instead of using the old classification of white, black, blah, 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 I can now say I am a European if somebody light skin is in my family. So I right now can call myself European, I can call myself white, I can call myself African, and I can trade some Indian. But they will decide how they're going to place me. So if you kept the old classification, the number of whites are going to drop. But if you confuse it, they can redo it. So this is what you're looking at. In the backdrop of that, let me just tell you, these two white Americans who are going around the world, how do you knock off the greatest, reduce the population? There are methods. One, you can use no-clad implant, which they're trying to use on our young ladies, but it costs $6.80. Or you can use condoms, $6.48. Or you can use Depo-Provera, which they have, it's an injectable long-term estrogen, the birth control pill, and put it in a dissolvable, in an oil base, you stick it into the muscle and it stays there for 3 months. When we were in the South Pacific, that's what was used extensively on our people and throughout the world, and one of the things we help block. You're looking for a cheap, effective way of stopping black people from populating. You can use an IUD, which is only 4 cents. But if you use the quinacrine tablet for malaria, it's a penny. So that's what you want to do. But you've got to be able to stick it up into the female uterus so it causes a chemical reaction to scar down the fallopian tube. So they're running around in Vietnam, India, Pakistan, Chile, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Costa Rica, China, Iran, Colombia, Venezuela, Romania, Egypt, Croatia, Philippines, Morocco, Malaysia, but not in the United States. Luckily, we've got only one African country that allowed us, and that's Egypt. And let us, I'm just going to read you two sentences and we'll complete. There will be, this is what these white people are saying, so that you'll understand how they view you fellow Americans when you sit with Clinton. Describing quinacrine as an essential to population growth control. They have decided they have to control the population of you black folk, not white. The birth rate of Europeans, all Europeans, is negative. So if the Europeans only make up 4% of the world population, and they're losing population little by little, so that means they're going to come a time when they're 3% and 2% and 1%. They're all negative birth rate. They won't be here in any number in another 100 years. They understand it, but you will be here, Indians, Africans, Asians, etc. So they're saying they're going to do their part to knock off as many of you as they can. So they're sponsored by the U.S. government and private groups, and it says, according to this, the quinacrine, describing quinacrine as an essential to population growth control, he said, these white men, he sees it as a means of reducing the potential number of immigrants to the United States from developing nations. This explosion in human numbers, which after the year 2060 will come entirely from immigrants and the offspring of immigrants. Ain't gonna be no white folks coming, nor making babies. That's what he say here. 2060, that's no time. These immigrants, you people, will dominate our lives. There will be chaos and anarchy. They can't ride their horsey. Says this man, who relies in part of his anti-immigrant forces in the U.S. for finances. Last sentence. Overpopulation, as defined by these white folk, is a gravely serious national security issue, even more serious than the nuclear threat. So that you understand how they fully view you. And when you talk about what is Africa going to do to get out of the mess, they're coming out. You make your babies, you build your families, you protect yourself, and you don't join the IMF. So we conclude at this point.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
You want the date of that particular article, sir?
Pardon me?
Birth control article, the date.
Of that last.
Ron, why are you so disruptive?
Because he's the man of information.
But the brother's coming back. He isn't leaving. Thank you very much, Doctor.
It's the Wall Street Journal, Thursday, June 18th, 1998.
Page 811. Anything else, Ron?
Good, thank you.
Let me just make one, I'm gonna make one last point and I'm going to the question. You know all the AIDS that's in Africa? Okay. I will bring you the next time I come, the print out from the United Nations. And they state that all the predictions, as of 1998, all the predictions that they had about AIDS in the world was wrong. They said in their documents that as of 1998, all of what they told you about AIDS from 1978 was wrong. Now, if they tell you that they were wrong, what makes you believe them now? You know what they said? They admitted. What they did was, they went to a few villages in Senegal, Uganda, and a few. And in those villages, they went to the health care. And they found out that out of there, a large percentage of the people had AIDS. So they assumed that if a large percentage of the, let's say that these villages they went, 20% of the people had AIDS. They then took this 20% that they found in these villages and they used computer extrapolations to then say there must be 20% of the people in Africa who has AIDS. That's how they got their numbers. Pure computer fabrication. They admitted that what they now must do is take a wider sample. Okay? Then you ask them, how do you diagnose AIDS? Blood test, right? You got 1 billion people plus in Africa. How many of them do you think they did a single blood test? Virtually none. Now, how do you take a continent that have over 1 billion people, conservatively, in New York City? You probably don't have 1% of New York City who have ever had a blood test for AIDS. Now, you mean to tell me that you're going to go from a country like Zaire, which runs from Maine to Florida, one country, from the East Coast to Mississippi, in a dense rainforest, who you test? Nobody. So they don't do blood tests to test AIDS. But they don't tell you that. Because it comes from a white man in the UN, we believe there's AIDS all over Africa. Then you ask them, how did you get your numbers? Well, we took a sampling from it and we computer extrapolated. Then, as we conclude, you know how they got the numbers? We were told this by some sisters from in the UN. When the European countries will give you 50 cents. So we all work in the rural health clinics in Africa. If you report measles, 50 cents, mumps, 50 cents, malaria, 50 cents, but every case of AIDS, we give you $15. So what you gonna report? Now, because they're not doing any blood tests, guess what? What do you find? This is how they make the diagnosis of AIDS in Africa. If you walk into the clinic and you have weight loss, poor appetite, and poor appetite and a diarrhea. If you come in with these 3 symptoms, know what you got? AIDS. Now, but the white folk don't tell you this. They're the biggest liars in the world because they have an agenda to have you be misinformed. What in Africa, like in any country, continent, what gives you these? What are the three most important things? Now remember, these people, our people in the real poor areas have been coming into this clinic for the last 50 years with the same symptoms. And what gives you these symptoms? TB, low grade, dysentery, bad water. So what they do is the people in the rural clinic say, yeah, we got AIDS. We don't have AIDS. They say, if you want these three constellations, AIDS. So they reported. So what the Europeans did was, in their sampling, they said, my God, look at the high rate. Now, if you go to poor areas of Senegal and Ghana, wherever you may find where the water is poor and the health is down, you know many of the people are going to be sick. But you reported as AIDS, and the Europeans stopped it in, and that's why they took their computer models, and they got these big numbers. And it also works good. You know what they want you to do? They say that with all of this AIDS in Africa, what you African countries must do is you must buy these expensive drugs to stop the spread. So they must first convince you got it, and then hope that you will be stupid enough to buy these medicines that don't work. If you have these things, you will test positive for AIDS. That test that they do for AIDS is called the ELISA test. We've been using that in medicine for the past 30 years. We have been using it to diagnose arthritis and a number of conditions. And what they do is we draw your blood. And you know blood has a cellular component, cells, and it has a liquid. Plasma. This liquid has chemicals in it. These chemicals called antibodies. Those chemicals that your body produces to fight off germs, right? They draw your blood, they spin down and take this liquid. They take the liquid and they mix it with a chemical. Boom, positive. What is happening? That the reagent that they use reacts with something in your serum. So when this reagent that we've been using for the past 30 years, now they decide to use it for HIV, when this reagent reacts with your serum, oh, you got a positive exam. You are HIV positive. What they forgot to tell you, conveniently, and I can supply you with the material, is these antibodies that are in your serum, your plasma, the plasma and the cells, guess what? They're non-specific. Meaning that reagent, what antibodies will react to the reagent? There are about 70 conditions where your body has made antibodies that will react to give you a positive test with that. If any of you have ever had TB or had the exposure where you converted, any of you have ever had measles, mumps, chicken pox, herpes, malaria, hepatitis, go on. Anybody ever had sarcoidosis? If you've had any of these, each one of your body that have made antibodies to each of these, all these antibodies will give you a positive test. So when you draw a test, what are you really positive to? They don't know. They have no idea. They can't tell you which one. It is documented, double-blind studies in many of the universities, that you have at least 62 common conditions. Severe arthritis, where each of us have these antibodies floating around in our body, in our serum, that our cells have made, that will give us, most of us here will get an HIV positive exam. And let me end by telling you the real kicker. See these reagents they use? If you're in Africa, if your blood tests positive with 2 of the reagents, you are positive. But in America, you must test positive with 3 to be positive. And if you're in Australia, you must be positive in 6. So if you drew my blood, I've never had TB anything, but I've worked in the hospital for 20 years, so I'm pretty sure I must have had some exposure to TB, even though I never converted. And I've had at least 1 hepatitis shot. So anybody who's had a hepatitis shot will test positive. So all these little children that are now getting a hepatitis shot in the hospital, they all will test positive for AIDS. So that means then that you can draw my serum, take it to Africa, and because I've had the hepatitis shot, therefore I have antibodies to hepatitis, and because I've had chicken, measles, and mumps, I've had all three, I will test positive in Africa for AIDS. I come to America, I may not test positive. And if I go to Australia, I won't test positive. So what kind of a positive test is it that you can be positive in one country and negative in another? And it's not due to the fact that they know what they're doing. The Nazis, the medical experimentation and the lies are continuing. So they got this big AIDS conference, they badmouth us on AIDS, you feel bad, and then turn around to the ministers and try to convince them you should buy this medicine. AZT and the rest of the medicine are poisons. They have been banned by the drug companies for they were too toxic for cancer agents. Now all of a sudden you get it. And as I end, the scenario goes, you get positive AIDS, or you got a positive test. They recheck it, it's positive. Now you are under severe stress. And what does stress do to your T cells? What could drop your T cells? Stress? Rest? Don't get enough rest. Be under stress. Take certain antibiotics. There's 101 things that drop your T cells. So after you done drew blood, tell me that I'm HIV positive. Don't tell me because I had the hepatitis shot or something. Now I'm scared as hell. I'm under stress. I come back, I get a T cell suppression. You see how it works? And then I'm labeled AIDS. Now, if you're HIV positive, they put you in the national registry. And if you don't tell your partner, they're going to jail you.